Chrono Odyssey have given us a hint at the big update that they are planning with some major changes. However, there's a little bit of a hint that the game is going to get delayed beyond this year, so let's talk about it. Quick little bit of admin out the way. I do have a bloodshot eye. No damage, no anything like that, no risk, no crazy health issues. It's just one of those things that happens to me occasionally. So if you notice it, there's nothing wrong with me. There's a lot of things wrong with me, but the eye's not that big of an issue. Anyway, Chrono Odyssey, what they have done is they've given us a dev note update, and this is specifically part 1 about the feedback at the end of the closed beta test. There's some really interesting things in here, but there's also some really dry technical language. So I'm not going to read it word for word because you could literally just go and read the post, which I'll try and remember and put in the description. What I am going to do is sort of summarize it as we go. They say they've listened to the feedback, they've heard it, it's all about animations, motions, combat responsiveness, performance optimization, and graphics, and etc. And then at the end of this is actually another list, and it's pretty wild how much they actually think they need to address. But really, here they're going to talk about 3 major things. It's going to be the animation, the motion, the combat, and stuff like that. Going to be performance and optimization, lighting, and other graphical enhancements. You know, pretty clear that they are some of the key areas that they need to address. Well, they are trying to address it here. The first thing I personally wouldn't necessarily call an issue, but they're going to deal with hit feedback inconsistency. Now this, they say, is all to do with potentially packet desyncs between the client and the server. Maybe that's why I didn't experience it. Maybe I just never got that. They're doing some technical stuff to improve that. I'm not going to try and bore you with what it is because I don't know. If you're a dev, you'll just be able to read it, and if you're not, then just assume that's going to work, okay? Or we'll see it when we actually play it. They also talk about how the motion and the combat are interconnected and they're going to split them out. Okay, sounds cool. The next bit, I kind of assume they were already working on this, and you know, maybe that's in the build that Canon's been speaking about that we'll see in the closed beta test that they were already working on, because they're going to change or at least add a system called the Matrix, which is a really weird name, but very interesting nonetheless. And this system is going to allow you to have 4 progression paths per weapon. And what they're going to do is let you diversify your skill usage of each weapon. It sounds like you're going to have specific abilities and you're going to be able to amend them or change them and modify them to something that fits your goal or your playstyle. Whether that's chaining skills, switching between weapons, or exploring other tactical options. It's a bit vague, but fair enough. You will then need to actually farm gear that fits your playstyle. Sounds really interesting. It reminds me a little bit of what Bellator's has just announced, where it has, you know, the sort of like Diablo 4 kind of vibe, and you can enhance abilities here and there. But I like the sound of it. I'm happy to see it. I do think some people are getting bored of just the weapon trees, the talent trees in Chrono, so it makes sense to maybe make that a little bit more interesting. To enable that, they're going to create some new animations. Super job. Okay, great. Next is the camera. A couple of these are just a little bit like inane, changing the camera so that when you get too close to terrain, it doesn't get blocked and stuff like that. Okay, that's fine. The next one, they say the following issues with the lock-on system will also be addressed. I hope some of these are going to get addressed beyond the lock-on system. They say they don't want it to just ping around like when you change target, and the camera gets a little bit too close during melee combat, and then the camera resets after combat, which, if you know, is one of my pet peeves. They don't ever really address FOV, and in fact they've said we're not going to add an extra layer of zoom, which I really wish they did. I want to be able to zoom out just a little bit more with a little bit extra FOV, primarily ideally a slider, and actually remember where my camera was set. It keeps resetting. Maybe if they fix it here, maybe they'll fix it in the rest of the game. I hope so. Also, skills are actually going to be where the player is facing rather than the camera. Okay, that's fine. They're also going to fix some of the camera shake, which I'm guessing is just a bug, so I'm not too stressed about that. Next, they talk about controls. Now, there's a couple of different points here. The first bit is literally just the feel of combat and enemies effectively getting staggered. They're going to get staggered from 1 second to 2 to 4 seconds. And it's all about clearer timing for follow-up attacks, greater sense of risk and reward, they say. I mean, sure, we'll feel it when we play it. The next bit, I think, is 2 different sections, although the wording is a little bit awkward. We're also reviewing and fixing unnatural character movements, which on its own, I'm very happy with. The sliding about, the jumping's a little bit awkward. Maybe they'll fix the inertia. Sounds great. Then they say, and collision inconsistencies that cause the character to appear that it's floating. I was never bothered by that. Some people did point it out. Never really offended me. I never really took umbrage to it, but yeah, great things to be fixing. This is very, very minor in terms of its placement in this dev post, but probably one of the most important ones in my opinion. And then we're going to get very, very dry technical stuff that I'm not even going to begin to pretend that I understand. They're talking about performance and optimization, and the first one is saying they're going to do some stuff to reduce the GPU load and improve real-time performance. And how they're going to do that is remove nanite for some of the things, because they're only going to do that where it's necessary. Nanite's the little, instead of having pixels, they have dots. I'm not going to fully explain it here. But then it just goes wild and I literally won't understand it. They're going to change these assets that rely on an instant static mesh or hierarchical instant static mesh to minimize draw calls and GPU strain. To somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, it sounds like gobbledygook. I suspect if you're a dev, this all makes sense. And it's not just this performance upgrade, they're going to do more. They're shifting the level design towards reusable environment assets to improve deployment efficiency and runtime performance to speed up production and simplify maintenance while reducing memory, disk, and rendering overhead. Great, maybe, hopefully. And it's just the same kind of thing. We're going to reduce some assets that we're not getting used. We're going to have trim sheets, which I don't know what the hell they are, and if I tried to understand it, it wouldn't make any sense. Trim sheets consolidate commonly used detail elements such as metal edges, moldings, panel lines, and bolts into a single texture laid out within a 0 to 1 UV space. Guys, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. However, it does say that with it should be a little bit easier to make variants on things with minimal performance costs. So yeah, I mean, it sounds good. Yeah, it is what it is. Same thing for the memory usage, restructuring the loading system by separating rendering data from collision data. Great, maybe. They're going to make some changes to their garbage collection. Let's just skip this bit, right? Like, they're going to make several changes to the performance. If you are a performance nerd and you know Unreal Engine, then please, go ahead and read this. For everybody else, we'll believe this when we get to play it if the performance is better. It's that simple, really. Like, you either understand it or you don't, and if you don't like me, then it doesn't really make any sense. And I just can't be bothered trying to wrap my head around it. It's not something I really give two craps about personally. Let's jump to something that's sort of the same, but slightly different. For the graphics, it's sort of a lot of the same technical jargon. They're going to reduce unnecessary calculations by streamlining the rendering pipeline without compromising visual quality. They're going to do something with the ocean shaders and wave rendering, which is fine. The sea looked okay, but nothing amazing. Oh, this one's huge. This one's amazing. To further optimize, we'll be reducing reliance on world position offset vertex animation. Of course. That's what I thought. I thought they should have done that. I sort of wish, and it does exist. I just wish it was a little bit simpler and that they told me the overall goal. They do say that this is going to achieve a better balance between visual and quality and performance. Yes, beautiful. Don't worry as well though, they're working to improve overall screen quality by delivering high resolution visuals and smoother transitions. By adjusting and mitigating our temporal super resolution settings, we'll be reducing motion blur and ghosting effects. All right, that's cool, great. Then this one's actually pretty big. They're going to add DLSS and FSR. You hope they're not trying to get away with bad performance by just adding this, but what would a game be in this era if it doesn't launch with this? It's pretty required at this point. The next one is a big one because a lot of people complained about the lighting, and they're addressing it here. They're going to reduce unnecessary lighting calculations. That isn't really necessarily improvement, it's just a performance improvement, but fair enough. They're also going to transition to cluster-based light management system to reduce rendering cost, light overlap, shading complexity, which hopefully will reduce in more efficient rendering. But the next one is really the one you want to see. To improve the overall quality of lighting, we're standardizing exposure values and redefining the priority and range of key lights to improve contrast fidelity and maintain consistent exposure across the scene. What I think this means is it's not going to be washed out anymore. They don't want the darks to be so dark and the brights to be so bright. Things are going to get a little bit more balanced, so you'll actually be able to see in the shadows and the bright light won't wash out the scene, is what I take that to mean, or at least I hope that's what it means. They also talk about what's coming in part 2 of this, which is kind of funny because it sounds like pretty much everything. It's combat systems, technical stability, graphics and animations, and sound, UI, gameplay flexibility, in-game guidance, balance, content flow, progression, replayability, social features, narrative serviceability, and bug fixes. I just hope that they do it in a way that is a little bit more digestible than this. It's nice to see, but it's very, 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 very dry. Now, there is a little bit of a hint that this game is definitely not coming this year. There's a bit of a chain here about, when's the CBT2 going to happen, but I want to draw your attention to this line specifically. As for the CBT2, we currently don't have a confirmed date, and we can't guarantee whether or not it will happen within this year. Well, if they're not guaranteeing that, then it strongly suggests that the game itself might not be this year, probably won't be this year. And I suspect we'll get confirmation at that the next time we see Kakao's financials. But yeah, I would not personally be expecting it this year. It would be a surprise not to see the closed beta 2 this year, but I suspect that'll probably depend on how they get on with the next build. Either way, I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. I just want to bring this one up because it's sort of funny. Somebody asks, hey, please don't copy New World, like move away from New World. And they say, there are indeed a few aspects where we were influenced by New World, but they're quite minimal and not something to be concerned about. That's funny on two main reasons. One, that thought was not minimal. Let's be honest, that was borderline plagiarism. However, nothing to be concerned about. I just find that funny. Hey, yo, look, we're not. Hey, we might be completely stealing the blue and the red trees and effectively the gathering and crafting, but we're only taking the good parts, guys. Trust us. I don't know. I found it funny. I would say I do actually respect Bongum Bay doing all of this on Twitter, or X as it's actually called. He's been replying to a lot of people. He's took a bit of time off, but he's really pumping. He seems genuinely passionate. I suspect he might be using like ChatGPT to translate, or maybe he just speaks English naturally. I don't actually know. But I at least respect the communication, and I think that's decent. Keep in mind that they're not official announcements, so they're not actually from Kakao or Chrono Studios. He might say one thing and then they change it, so don't get too hung up on it. But yeah, either way, this post basically, whilst it is long and dry, it does basically address the things that we would want them to address, kind of, although just in a way that is a little bit awkward to interpret. Animation and motion, combat, yeah, perfect. Some people didn't like the combat. I thought it was all right. If they can smoothen it out for a lot of people, that will please a lot more people, I think. The motion, it's only a little bit in here, but it sounds like they'll fix that, I think, and hope. Performance and optimization, there was a lot of technical stuff that I didn't understand, but it all sounded positive. They were at least working on it. Performance and optimization normally done as your game is getting ready to launch, so I'm not concerned about this yet. And then the lighting and the graphical enhancements, yeah, it's really the lighting, right? I do think the rocks on the textures, the textures on the rocks wasn't particularly great, but the lighting was making things look simultaneously like super washed out and super dark. Being somewhere in the middle and, you know, making that less could make it really good. Basically talks about the three major points. I personally would like an FOV slider and a little bit more zoom. I don't want to zoom out to the moon, guys. I just want a little bit more. And do you know why I want a little bit more? So I don't feel sick when I play the game. I'm not asking because I want to break my immersion. I don't want to be zooming out from like 3 miles away. I just don't want to feel sick when I play. And I don't know why, but this trend of like third-person games just being super zoomed in, I don't like it, right? I get the vibe. I just don't like it because I can't play them half the time. Chrono's not that bad once the zoom is actually staying maxed, and once we get an FOV slider, I think it'll be okay. But I'm going to keep going on about it because it's important for me and other people like me. Anyway, those are the big changes. That was very long and very dry. I'm sorry. I love you all. Goodbye. Oh, like and subscribe and become a Patreon. Goodbye.